Hey everybody, I'm Ken Rother. I'm the Managing Director of eLab, and along with my two teaching colleagues, Steve Gall and Tom Schreiber, and a couple folks back home, we're really excited to bring eLab to Cornell, Silicon Valley, and to the Computer History Museum, which I visited a whole bunch of times because it's sort of, this is my life. I'm a computer guy. I want to tell you a little bit about the program of eLab. What is it? So it's a student accelerator. It's a full-on accelerator experience. Takes the whole year. We accept teams at the beginning of September. We get about 50 teams applying. It's a very competitive program. We accept 12 to 15 teams. These are teams from all over campus, any school, basically from juniors all the way to PhD candidates. These are folks who are looking to launch a business as they finish their academic career. These are folks who have probably taken an entrepreneurship course, maybe an engineering product course, maybe something in the ILR school, and they now have an idea for a food product, a gadget, a service, and they're looking to launch a business. What do they get? So first of all, they get credit. This is a credit-bearing program. This program is 10 years old. It's a credit-bearing program. They get 4.5 credits from the Johnson School, 1.5 in the fall, 3 in the spring. There's regular classroom work where they get lectures on topics, things like intellectual property, marketing, branding, sales, things you need to know about, legal issues if you're going to do a startup. We do a number of boot camps through the year. We do a couple in the fall. We do a few in the spring, where we really work through with the students things like storytelling. How do you get your story across, what you're doing? And you're going to see some of those students telling those stories today. So it's a very intense experience. We work very, very hard to team them up with Cornell alums as mentors who may have industry experience or experience raising money, just domain experience. So as you listen to the stories today and then visit them at the table later, think about how can I help or how can someone I know help? We've had some pretty good luck with this program. As I said, it started 10 years ago. A fellow named Dan Cohn started it, who's now at Wake Forest. Our teams have raised quite a bit of money, VC-backed money, angel money through seed, through VC. Last we counted, it was around $144 million. If you look at a cohort, which is typically 12 to 15 teams, if you look back a year from now, you'll see that somewhere between 50 to 60% of the teams gave it a go or are still going. They've at least raised angel money, if not seed or serious institutional money, and they're moving their businesses along. So we're talking about seriously scalable businesses that you're going to hear about. Let me tell you about one particular company, actually, Spectrums. Spectrums makes a wearable. It's a little ring that you connect to your iPhone. As it senses different colors, it can play different sounds, like drum sounds or animal sounds. It's a great example of the ecosystem at Cornell. Spectrum started in a product design class run by Rob Shepard, I believe. They participated in the Hardware Accelerator, which is a program at Rev, our business incubator downtown. They joined eLab. They did a Kickstarter, were quite successful. Eventually, they decided to set up shop in Boulder, continued to do well, and recently they were acquired by Spherio, which is a very big STEM education company. So we're very proud of them. We have a bunch of folks we brought down with us today. So we have 7 teams. You're going to hear from 3 of them, but all of us will be over at the tables later to answer questions and hear what you might think. So let me introduce the 4 people who aren't going to be pitching today. So we have Christoph Garlock, Paulina Vicaris, Evan Turner, and Nicole Bessman. Now, we also have 3 people who are going to come and tell you your story. They're going to tell you a little bit about what they're up to. And I want to remind you, these are all very early stage entrepreneurs. So they figured out who their customer is. That's hard. They figured out what problem their customer has. That's hard. It's all about the customer, not about the solution. Now, as we go into that second semester, we're in the spring semester, they're starting to think about, what am I going to build? What's the solution to solve that problem? So what you're going to hear today is the evolution of where they came from, where they're at right now, and maybe a little bit about where they're going. We have a few judges, panelists, who are going to poke some holes, ask some questions on behalf of the audience. So let me introduce everybody. Our panelists are Robert Hess, 91. Robert's a very active angel investor, a couple of organizations. He's also a patent attorney. We have Priya Rajan, who's Mbaye 16, and she's the managing director of Silicon Valley Bank, and she hosted all of us this morning, which we thank you for. And Trivedi, 13, he's a partner at Foundation Capital. Now, the three teams you're going to hear from, lastly, you'll hear from Kyle Johnson, Mbaye 19. Before Kyle will be Christine Muchemu, Mbaye 19 also. And first up will be Case Baillargeon, 20.
Hi everyone, I'm Kais. I'm one of the three co-founders of Response. Response's web app accelerates the delivery of life-saving aid by cutting charity purchasing time in half. So I'm going to start with a story that was told to us. A couple of years ago, a clean water shortage hit the region of Chakwal in Pakistan, and nonprofits had to purchase filtration systems as soon as possible for those affected. You can't just walk into a store and buy thousands of water filters. They have to go through a formal process. So they wrote a contract explaining what they needed to buy, and suppliers submitted bids to win that contract. That's formal procurement. And on average, it takes over 60 days to purchase, let alone deliver the filters. And that's not okay when the district of 1.5 million people were left without clean water. So why was this such an issue? Well, we wanted to find out. So we interviewed 115 procurement experts in the charity industry, and what we found is that humanitarian procurement is broken. And that's because when they write these contracts, information and expertise is distributed around the world. A file could be locked away in a basement in New York City, while an expert is halfway across the world in Kenya. Then when they collect all these bids in, the entire process is manual. So the entire data entry process is done manually, and then they have to evaluate, which takes hundreds of hours. Ultimately, it means that aid moves slowly, and unfortunately, this is a standard across the industry. So what's our solution? Well, Response is a collaborative contract writer with digital bid analysis. So charities have all their information available for use in one place. Then they can automate bid collection comparison and leave that to us. So financial and technical evaluation is incredibly easy. And that means that they save time and money. But more importantly, when we put this in front of procurement officers, what we found is that the process can be cut in half. So aid moves twice as quickly, and that means that efficient procurement can mean millions more people get help. But how are we actually going to get this in the hands of these charitable organizations? Well, we have two key strategies. The first is the Response Innovation Lab, which is a technology adoption pipeline for the charity industry. And the second is procurement associations like the IAPG, which is a concentrated pool of customers that we can target all at once. We're working with the leads of both organizations, and through them, we're connected with 30 of their members. And through the magic of network effects, we learned pretty early on that one charity signing on, all their suppliers are forced to use the e-procurement solution that they choose to gain access to their contracts. So those 30 charities represent 5,000 suppliers in opportunity. And we've chosen to charge those suppliers a monthly subscription fee of $300 that over the entire year comes out to $3,600. Multiplying that by our 5,000 suppliers, we project our annual revenue to be $18 million. Right now, there are three categories of existing solutions. The first is enterprise software, which is really expensive and out of reach for most organizations. The second is called RFP software, which actually doesn't cover all the contracts needed to purchase these complicated goods. And finally, in-house solutions do exist, but they're hard to support, and they come with thousands of features, and really they only need a handful. And on top of that, we have two key other competitive advantages. The first is our powerful data set. Because we're focused on the simplification and standardization of the contracts, we're able to, for the first time, build formal procurement's largest structured database of contracts and bids. And secondly, it's our strategic partners. This is an industry where a small number of really key players kind of influence everybody else. And already we're working with the World Visions and the Red Crosses of the world. So we're not only winning their business, but also their influence. And that strategy has seemed to work. So those 115 interviews have translated into 7 co-creators who are working with to develop Response right now. They're helping us at every stage of the process. And we've actually, this is out of date, since we built this slide, we now have 5 field testers who are going to be using our live MVP out in the real world next month. And we've told you where we've been. Where do we plan on going? Well, we have a full product launch scheduled for the end of this summer, 2019, through our adoption pipelines. We don't want to stop there. We think it's ridiculous, and we believe that charities shouldn't be focused on contracts and bids. It should be focused on helping people. So Response ultimately is a digital procurement officer. We want formal purchasing to be easy as buying off Amazon. And through automation and simplification of the process, we believe that's achievable. But that's a hard problem to solve. So we put together a team of Cornell engineers with experience in anything from product development to supply chain, and we are so fortunate to have been supported by both the Beck and Kessler fellowships. And we need your help. We're looking for connections at humanitarian organizations with less than $200 million in annual revenue. Ideally, they'll be involved in procurement. And thank you very much for your attention. Enjoy the rest of your afternoons.
I can start off. I got an unfair advantage with all three of them because I got to spend 2 hours before.
We did.
Truly amazed by kind of like the journey and like you starting off with the story. At the end of the day, at the early stage, as we talked about, you know, it's the founder's vision and the team's vision that comes to life. And what you're doing today is going to be probably completely different or pivoted to what you're going to do tomorrow or the day after, but it starts now. So with that said, I'm going to kind of dive in a little bit on how are you going to make money? Like, what is a revenue model?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, or what are you thinking about going into?
We're planning to charge both sides. On the charity side, it's just a case of splitting the savings to cover the cost of development. On the supplier side, we've looked at the various costs from they're spending tens of thousands of dollars in marketing to get these organizations to actually notice them. And on top of that, too, the success rate on these awards is 1 in 5. So they're losing a ton of money on these opportunities, and through putting more in front of them and basically helping them to win more, we believe that $300 is a fair fee. But we're going to learn as we go through the sales process. Thank you.
That's great.
Super interesting idea. I guess the question I'd have is kind of just, are you focused on digital procurement software just for humanitarian purposes? Do you plan to go out to other markets? And why start with the humanitarian?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It really comes down to two things. It's where our network is right now. We are also ultimately, we're passionate about it. We started off thinking about charity fundraising, but what we learned very quickly was that it wasn't how you were raising the money, it's how the money is being used. And once we realized how much of the extent of that issue was, it kind of just totally took over, and we've been working on this ever since.
It's an excellent idea, fascinating story, and it's always great to see an idea that adds leverage to the way people are trying to change the world. My question is, what is the MVP? What is the hypothesis that you're testing with your MVP, and what are the criteria for success?
Yeah, sure. So the MVP, it's two value propositions. The first is that collaborative contract builder, so giving them tools where they can work on the same contract together and reuse old sections. So we took the complex contracts and broke them down into these kind of simple sections that are easy to understand, whether you're from a country where English isn't the predominant language to the US. And then secondly, it's this digital bid collection. Right now, it's all through email. So standardizing the format across all these collected bids is going to speed up evaluation, as well as allow us to start learning more about that, building the data set out, and eventually being able to automate that process for them.
And what are the criteria for success? How do you know if it's a success?
So we kind of operate in these 2-week runs where we'll iterate one MVP out, put it in front of our 7 co-creators, get their feedback, tally it up, and then go into the next version. And right now we're working on building a live version that is going to be put out into the field so we can get actual real-time information from the usage, essentially. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about the competitive landscape? You briefly touched on it.
Yeah.
And particularly on the software side, who do you think about? Who do you end up running into when you're pitching to a customer?
I can give you an example of each of those 3 categories. So the first, Cornell alum, Coupa and SAP Ariba are 2 very classic supply chain enterprise softwares. For RFP solutions, they're kind of smaller. Direct RFP is one, mTenders is another. And then finally, for in-house solutions, we've been told by one organization they actually paid $17 million just to kind of develop through a consultant an in-house solution, but it hasn't worked out at all. So.
And those are all general purpose, whereas you're going.
We're really focused on this specific.
Is there something unique on the product side that ends up being critical?
Pardon me?
Is there something unique on the product side, on the software side, that ends up being critical for humanitarian purposes that you're able to sell?
I couldn't quite hear your question.
Is there something
critical?
unique on the product side for the software that you're building.
That's specific to humanitarian organizations?
Humanitarian purposes, because all of those other examples are not focused on just that market.
So what we did essentially is every time we've gone and interviewed these charity procurement officers and procurement professionals, we've tried to amass a collection of their formal procurement kind of processes, and we synthesized all their individual processes into something that kind of covers every base. So this is basically built for the humanitarian process. But through that experience, we've learned a lot about formal procurement in general. And this is just kind of our beachhead base case MVP test. So, thank you.
That's great. Awesome. Are we right on time?
Sure.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Christine. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Liyanga. Liyanga is a formulator and manufacturer of natural food-based hair products for women with Afro-textured hair. I'd like to start by introducing you to Jere. Jere has a big problem. She's using 3 hours of her time and spending she's using 3 hours of her time and using 5 products to get to soft, tangle-free, manageable, and healthy hair. It turns out Jere is not alone. There are 10 million other women in the US who have this problem. And here's why. Jere has natural hair, and she's a novice in natural hair care because she's only had natural or chemically unstraightened hair for a period of 3 to 4 times. This introduces unique hair challenges to Jere because it makes Jere's hair texture very curly. Jere has type 4C hair. This is important because during Jere's wash day, she has to start by pre-pooing her hair to detangle it. What this means is that she's applying oils to her hair to remove the tangles. Jere then co-washes her hair, meaning that she's washing her hair with conditioner just to remove the tangles. Jere then takes painstaking efforts to shampoo and condition her hair in braided sections so as not to introduce any more tangles. Once this is done, Jere then deep conditions her hair. Our solution to this problem is Liyanga, our natural food-based deep conditioner that would take Jere's 6-step, 3-hour process and cut it in half. Liyanga essentially is a unique blend of lubricating oils that detangles Jere's hair and leave it feeling manageable, and nutrients that give it softness and health. Our initial target market for this is New York, where we have found that there are 630,000 women who have this problem, bringing that target market to $1.3 million. Looking at the total available market, this is a $500 million market that we're going after. To begin executing on our business model, we would sell Liyanga directly to the consumer. We would advertise on natural hair forums, such as this one, on Facebook, and using media influencers such as Cheesy Duru. We found these forums and Cheesy Duru through our extensive customer discovery. We will expand by selling Liyanga in select hair salons in New York, preferably, and once we're done, we will seek to expand to the rest of the US. Looking at the competitive landscape, this is a very fragmented market. There are several players, but only Liyanga would take the amount of time and the number of products being used and cut it in half. This is why Liyanga is better than the competition. With that, I'd like to introduce you to my team. My sister Natondo, she's a chemical engineer and a nanomolecular scientist. She and I formulate Liyanga. I too am a chemical engineer. I have several years of work experience in engineering. In addition, I'm currently obtaining my MBA at the Cornell S.C. Johnson College of Business. My other sister, Salika, is a marketing strategy development lead in East Africa. And together, we're committed to solving this problem faced by Jere and several other women like Jere. To date, we have accomplished a lot. We have formulated Liyanga. We have done extensive customer discovery, interviewing 115 women just like Jere to establish product market fit. And going forward, we have also prototyped Liyanga with 40 end users, and we continue to do so. Looking ahead, we are planning on validating our value proposition online by using digital media ad campaigns that will inform our launch in December when we go to market. With that, I would like to leave you with this. We're seeking advisors who can help us in developing our strategic options in e-commerce order fulfillment, in building a brand and brand identity, as well as thinking through what it would take to develop on-shelf packaging for Liyanga, as well as our shipping packaging for Liyanga. With that, I'd like to say thank you, and please contact us.
I can start off
again.
Okay. Again, really awesome to hear kind of what you're building. One of the things I work with early stage companies day in, day out. But this is a problem that we're seeing more often, I mean, especially being addressed. So the good side is definitely there's a demand. Probably the other side is there's a lot of people working on trying to figure out the right solution. So how are you creating the barrier to entry in an already crowded space? Are you building how are you protecting it?
Yeah, how are we going to protect it? So based on the discussions that we have been having with our lawyers recommend that we go after trade secret routes and not a provisional patent or a patent, because the advice that we got is that a patent would disclose what our ingredients are, and that would leave it out in the world to just be changed or altered in some way, and therefore take down that barrier that we have put through a trade secret.
Right, and then just a follow-on suggestion then would be to kind of consider then what else, right? Then if that cannot protect it, then you're left open for potential risk. Yeah. Then what does that mean? How are you going to then figure that out? I think that is something that probably need to kind of work that out, and happy to kind of talk offline to see how we can help.
Yeah, that would be great if we could talk after about this. Yeah,
I think follow up on that, I would say using influencer marketing has ended up being one way to kind of solidify your brand and the value that you provide.
Right.
I guess, separate question, but just help us understand, have you created this product already, and how are you going about doing that? Where is it being manufactured?
Yeah. So we have formulated the product, and that's me, my sister Nitondo, and I. Yep. And right now we produce it in our kitchens, and it's basically a bench scale. And to get to the bigger market, we'd have to go through co-packers, but we'd have to be very strategic in the type of co-packers that we use, because this is a food-based deep conditioner. So we'd probably perhaps go through food manufacturers, and also thinking through the packaging would also would have to also factor that in when we're deciding on which co-packer. Did that answer your question?
That was super helpful.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Yeah.
So I thought it was an excellent statement of the problem.
Okay.
And I can definitely identify with Jerry. I have type 0 F hair, and it's tough. But more seriously, obviously some of your investors or potential investors may resonate more or less with the product. Who is your target investor?
Yeah, target investor are people or investors who can see the opportunity in this, for example, and see that this could be a big thing. Because as much as I am looking at the US market and perhaps using a bottom up to describe the market size, I mean, there are very many people out there who have this kind of hair texture but may not be accounted for on that $500 million. So this could be bigger than that. So investors who have that vision and can share the vision that my sister and I have would be the type of investors that we'd be going after. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, do you have a strategy for finding those people?
Yeah. Well, for example, this week we visited with first round capital, and we spoke to an associate in there. So that was one way of being exposed to an investor. And granted, it was through eLab, but going forward, I can also see myself also using LinkedIn searches, right, to be connected to other associates out there in the market, in the venture capital world, to kind of see what other companies are in their portfolio similar to first round capital that could be a fit for Liyanga.
And I would think that, this is, people get it in the sense, even if you have not used it or you don't necessarily have the texture that you have the problem, this is relatable because, again, at the end of the day, you know, you're just, the way you're saying it, you're definitely reducing the time. It's a lot more complex process. So any B2C kind of investor, if they can see the scale, would be interested. So you do need to target the folks who have done some of the consumer products who get that and the virality. I mean, definitely considering this is early, you know, that 500 million should be like 1 billion to be venture scale, but you'll get there. I mean, I think.
Was the 500 million for just New York, or was that?
No, it was actually the global.
That's global.
Yeah, so that was my global.
You might have been conservative. But.
Yeah, it may have been because I did a bottom up rather than looking at maybe the brands out there and what the US hair care market, the world hair care market is, and trying to see what percentage I would take of that. I didn't do it that way. I did bottom up based on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you all.
Good afternoon. My name's Kyle Johnson, and with my co-founder, Sam Lyons, I'm working on Incite Analytics. We're helping care managers identify and prioritize their patient population to improve outcomes. So if you're like my wife or my friends, your probably eyes are glazing over right now. So most importantly, what I want to do is introduce you to Sandra. So Sandra is an RN, or a registered nurse, and she's been working as a case manager for 11 years. She works for a health system, and her major 2 jobs are to identify the high-risk individuals in her patient population. So those are people with multiple chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease. Secondary, identify these rising risk individuals, a more difficult task, but these are people maybe pre-diabetic who are headed towards that high risk category. Very high utilizers of the health system. If you guys have ever played Minesweeper, you can sympathize with her job. She's part of a case management team of 4 for 50,000 patients. So she's combing through a little over 12,000 electronic medical records to find these high risk individuals and to find these rising risk individuals. Once she identifies or thinks she identifies who those are, she needs to provide an optimal care strategy to turn their kind of life and their health around. She does that currently, with 13 separate Excel spreadsheets, and her 3 other care managers she works with all have 13 separate Excel spreadsheets. So really wrought with inefficiencies, and what's happening is these care management teams are having extreme difficulty appropriately allocating resources to maximize those patient outcomes and really to get those patients healthy. And when you look at organizations like Sandra's versus high-performing organizations, they're leaving $74 per patient per month on the table by mismanaging patients, essentially giving patients labs when they shouldn't be, or procedures when or not giving them procedures when they should be. And her workload, as you guys saw, is massive. And as she looks forward and sees the baby boomer generation filling in, already coming into those high risk and rising risk populations, this problem is not going anywhere. So what does Incite do? We come in and we ingest those risk profiles of those patients. We ingest all that patient data, and we really prioritize need based on what we see. And we're able to improve that care management and utilization, improve financial metrics, and ultimately improve patient outcomes. So we're taking all those electronic medical records she's looking at. We're taking all the claims data, which is rich with financial information, pulling it into our predictive analytics model, and pushing out a seamless dashboard that she can interact with at the same time as the other care managers she's working with. So she goes from this to this. Very streamlined, already developed within her work stream, prioritizes her patients. She can double click on any patient and see their profile. What care have they received recently? What's their historicals? What's the optimal care strategy going forward? And what action should she take next, or her colleague? So the impact of this is pretty massive when you look at an organizational level. We can save these organizations $2.8 million based on the interactions that Sandra is now going to have with her and the procedures that she's going to be able to get these individuals. And we've looked at the data, and we have 252 organizations that we believe could immediately benefit and have a burning need for our solution. So looking at a target market of $700 million. We really believe in this system of care management and the patient outcomes that come along with it, as well as the savings we're able to generate. So again, we take that $2.8 million in savings. We're going to take a 5% portion of that, and that's going to result in $140K of revenue per organization. So looking ahead, based on our projections, we're going to have 20 contracts within 2022, and that'll generate $2.5 million in revenue. Our team is incredibly passionate and has been involved in this space. Myself and my co-founder have been in the healthcare industry for 10 years. Myself on the clinical side in emergency medical services, Sam within healthcare consultant. Our resident genius on the team is Shawnee Liu, who's undergrad at Cornell and has been leading our development team of Robert and Jagger. I'm really fortunate to have her on the team. We wouldn't be anywhere without our advisors. Andrea Ippolito is also a teaching member of the eLab team, as well as has had a successful exit in the health tech field, current executive director of engineering management at Cornell. And then Joy Geldman, who's at Weill Cornell, as a cardiologist, has really been that clinical resource. Where we've obviously been in eLab, over 100+ interviews. We've done tons of shadow opportunities following these case managers around. Recently got a little bit of grant funding this past week, so that was super exciting for us. We're headed to Rice Business Plan competition and looking to pilot here in early July with a collaborator health system that we've been working with. If you have experience within the health tech space, we'd love to chat with you. Also, the Twitter comment earlier, we have a total of 10 followers right now, so feel free to follow us. Thank you for your time.
So I guess, can you give a concrete example of how this would impact people? It seems like a little too abstract to understand exactly how it works in the real world. So like a use case, yeah.
So a concrete example, and we've followed around these case managers and actually headed down to Thursday to go follow some more down in San Diego. A concrete example of this is we see these case managers, and basically for 6 to 8 hours a day, they're working on their computers, going through these Excel spreadsheets on a second monitor, pulling up these electronic medical records, pulling in patient data into these Excel sheets, doing this for literally 6 to 8 hours a day, and then spending 2 hours working overtime to go to these patients' houses and potentially coach them on how to test for their blood sugar if they have diabetes. So what we see in the way that we can impact patient outcomes is really the reduction of time for that 6 to 8 hours into you walk in the morning, they have a clean dashboard of who they need to interact with, how they need to interact with them. We believe in the power of the case manager. We're not providing any care at this point. We're just trying to streamline their job.
I was just going to ask as well. I think process optimization is I think it's covering two different angles. One, elderly tech, and any challenges around it has picked up a lot of traction recently. That's one. Another one is in general process optimization period is something that's kind of scalable.
Yes.
Like you can start off with this and then iterate where else it could apply. One of the things I would also kind of think about from is insurance. I know you've not addressed that at all, because I would think if you do things right kind of proactively, you would be saving on the insurance claims that the care takers or the organizations would have. So you're actually kind of saving them money. So if you can actually show them how much you would save by proactively doing all of the things right and addressing the high-risk individuals before they get the high risk, then you're going to save them a bunch of money. So I feel like that number could be in time X.
Yes, so the 252 that you saw they're coined as value-based systems. Mm-hmm. So they actually have a relationship with these insurers that says, we're giving you a bundle payment of a certain amount of money. You guys need to give care to this person, whether it goes above or below. So that shared savings is what you're seeing. I didn't want to introduce too many different words, but we've spoken to Aetnas and the Uniteds of the world, as well as Medicare and Medicaid, and understanding that interaction and how we truly believe in this incentive-aligned structure that is around care management, and we think that's where, if you look across the healthcare landscape, that's really where the patient outcomes are improving, and frankly, the financial metrics are improving as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think connected to Priya's point, the other thing I'd love to understand from you is what you see within the competitive landscape. There are a number of players that are kind of pushing after care management. And then connected to that, obviously, a lot of this is very much connected to value-based care and government policy that has gone out on that.
Yes.
There's questions around whether that will remain or not.
Correct, correct.
So help us to understand both of those points.
Yeah, so I guess first addressing the competitive landscape, we kind of tier it into, or we've kind of broken into 3 areas. So you have your Optums of the world, which are these large consultancies that come in and charge millions of dollars to implement a system like this that is highly customized, and actually you can't roll from organization to organization. So we don't see those as being our customers. Those are really high-performing value-based systems, as you mentioned. So we're going for a tier that's below that within those value-based. The second tier is the startups that are trying to address this right now. So beyond care management, another way that they're going after this is primary care physicians. So how can we create a prioritized list based on that? And what we've seen in our customer discovery of talking to hundreds of 100 case managers is they're either addressing this prioritization and doing this analysis very well, or they're doing the financial side very well and understanding how claims are affected. Nobody's taking the two very well in marrying that. So there's quite a few players in that space. We think we can differentiate ourselves because we're pulling in these 2 data sets and understanding how patient outcomes drive financial metrics. And then the second question was on, I'm sorry.
Government policy.
Government policy. So this is a huge thing. This was just in the news, actually. It's constantly in the news, but how accountable care organizations or value-based systems are unfolding. And the reality of it is that they are driving savings and they're driving outcomes for these high performing. So a lot of what you see in the news right now is, oh, these value-based systems aren't working. Well, if you take the whole spreadsheet of 561 for 2018 and you look at all their metrics and you take an average at the bottom line, that's actually true. But if you look at the top 100 value-based care systems, they're driving huge savings. So these are health systems are often zero margin or negative margin businesses, and some of these health systems are seeing 50 to 60 million in savings. So I believe in it. I believe in the outcomes. Politics aside, I think it provides value. So it's something we believe in at Incite, and I think a lot of people do. So I truly don't believe if the money is there, I don't think the insurance companies are gonna part ways with it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.